Back on the Bernie and Sid Show. It's Thursday. You know what that means. Every Thursday we talk to our friend Ben Shapiro, who reminded us last week that since he took over from Mike Savage a couple of weeks ago, 3 to 6 every day on our station, the ratings have gone up dramatically. Now, of course, we had to double check because you never know. You know, he could be exaggerating. But to your credit, Ben, we did go back to management, look at the numbers, and you were right. Didn't exaggerate at all. You're doing fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad. And I'm glad to have you guys checking my work because I wouldn't want to fib about that sort of thing.
Well, you know, we like you, but you never could believe anybody anymore these days. Anyway, I was reading some of your columns the last couple of days, and I went to Brooklyn College, one of the 4 schools I went to, and on Saturday, just last Saturday, Bernie Sanders started his presidential campaign at one of my alma maters, Brooklyn College, and you wrote a column about Bernie that you actually gave him some credit, I believe, at least for the way he feels about race. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you look at the Democratic field right now, it's sort of breaking down into 2 lanes, the intersectional lane and the progressive lane. And in terms of what's more scary for the country, honestly, I think the intersectional lane is a little more scary for the country. Bernie Sanders would be a terrible president. He would be not good at anything, but that would be part of the appeal, is that he actually wouldn't be able to get anything done. Where Bernie actually distinguishes himself in sort of a good way from the rest of the Democratic field is that he does have this older school belief in sort of the MLK dream of moving beyond race. And that's gotten him in trouble with a lot of the members of the intersectional base. So he'll be asked things like, do you think slavery reparations should happen? He'll say it's just not practical. It's not a thing I think should happen. And he'll get ripped up and down by his own base. He'll say, they'll ask him, do you think that America really needs another white president? He'll say, well, yeah, I mean, I'm here, aren't I? And
Right.
People on the left will go insane over it. You know, that view of race is a lot better than the rest of the Democratic views field of race. Now, Bernie wants to divide us by class, but I think that class divisions in the United States tend not to be quite as durable as race divisions in the United States, mainly because class divisions in the United States have never really been a thing. I mean, the fact is that America has been an overwhelmingly middle-class country for the vast majority of its existence, whereas racial differences and you know, hatred based on race have been a very real feature of America's history. So revivifying that is a lot easier than doing what Bernie has been trying to do and dividing us based on income.
That is true, but I would say this, Ben Shapiro, that Bernie Sanders still virtue signals in that vein, in that he calls Trump, he's the most racist, sexist, homophobic, this, that, and the other. So he engages in that himself as well, even though he claims, hey, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. But you do get the feeling, and I think the Democratic base gets the feeling, that it's all pro forma. That in reality, what Bernie actually believes is that his socialist principles are going to not only win the day, but are going to cure all ills. So when he talks about curing racism, what he really means is just a giant redistributionism program. And I think that most of the people in the Democratic base know that, which is sort of a problem for him on the one hand, because you have a lot of members of the base who believe in the intersectional ideal, which is that you have to look at people based on race, you have to divide people based on race, and then you have to design solutions that are race-based solutions.
You know, Ben, I was thinking about you yesterday, talking about Bernie Sanders. He falls into this category. So if you check my Facebook page, Sid Rosenberg, or the Twitter at Sid Rosenberg, here's what I posted. I said, any Jewish person that empathizes with the Palestinians and criticizes Israel is the worst kind of Jew. And they exist in big numbers, especially in my neighborhood on the Upper West Side of New York City. Big numbers. Bernie Sanders is one of those guys. So as we hear about anti-Semitism every single day coming from that party, you agree with what I said? If you're a Jewish person, there's no way you can be critical of Israel and sympathetic, or empathetic, I should say, to the Palestinians, can you?
I mean, if it comes down to a binary choice, of course not, right? I mean, if the idea is that you have to choose between the Israeli government, which happens to be liberal, which happens to believe in human rights, which happens to guarantee the rights of Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and you have to choose between that and the Palestinian government, which is a terrorist government, obviously that's an absurdity. And to equate the two is an absurdity. You know, to talk about various policies of Israel not being great, sure. I mean, we can do that in the United States. You can do that for Israel as well. But the general, the general quiz question that is asked on polls, do you sympathize more with the Israelis or the Palestinians? If the answer is the Palestinians, first of all, I don't know, just as a Western civilized human being, how that can be correct. And if the answer is as a Jew, I don't understand what Jewish principles would lead you to undercut the only Jewish state in the history of the world that protects Jews the world over, and also happens to be a westernized country that believes in the same principles as the United States, in favor of legitimately a terrorist organization that runs a terror state.
Excuse me. It's sort of inexplicable, but let me ask you this question, Ben Shapiro, regarding this Representative Ilhan Omar, and her statement and the resolution that the Democrats are supposed to put forward. They were going to put it forward 2 days ago. They may put it forward today. Who knows? But they're not going to name this lady by name. Plus, they're going to include anti-Muslim stuff. They're going to water it all down. So here's the thing that I want to just say, is that at least with Representative Omar, and even to a lesser extent, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Tlaib, the silver lining is they're exposing the left as the America-Israel-hating socialists that some of us knew that they always were, including President Obama, who was all for single-payer health care. He was anti-Israel. We knew it, but he knew it wasn't politically expedient to announce that to the public. He hid it, kept it on the DL, but now they're exposed.
Well, I think there's certainly truth to that. I think that you look at the new fresh faces, so faced of the Democratic Party, and they're extraordinarily open about their dislike for Israel, their hatred for Israel, their willingness to countenance anti-Semitism. I mean, remember, AOC was on the phone with open anti-Semite Jeremy Corbyn 2 weeks ago and bragging about it on Twitter. They are the Labour Party of Britain. There is no distinction between the new wave of Democrats and the Labour Party in Great Britain, and that is an anti-Semitic socialist party.
No doubt.
Hey, let me ask you this. One of the stories that I don't believe is getting enough coverage, it gets, I guess, on a national basis some, is this crisis in Venezuela. We know where President Trump stands. You wrote about this just a couple of days ago, Ben Shapiro. He's on the right side. And he's asking Americans to be on the right side. The guy that's been there, the president, he's just a really bad guy, to quote Donald Trump. Should Americans be concerned? Well, what is the major crisis going on in Venezuela right now that should keep Americans on top of it?
Well, I mean, obviously, the massive human rights crisis that's happening in Venezuela that does result in net out migration, which does have an impact on America's southern border. But beyond that, the suffering of the Venezuelan people who have been relegated to eating dogs in one of the most oil-rich, natural resource-rich nations in the world is pretty astonishing. The fact that, again, to get back to those fresh faces of the Democratic Party, the fact that all of them have universally come out and said that Juan Guaido, who is the left-wing alternative to the evil socialist dictator of Venezuela, that they don't back Guaido, that they're going to sit still and let Maduro do what he's doing, presumably out of dislike for American intervention. I mean, that's a pretty astonishing position, especially because President Trump and nobody else in the West really has the intention of militarily intervening in Venezuela. The whole point is to create economic and political pressure for Maduro to leave.
Right. And just the juxtaposition right now of these people espousing socialism while socialism is failing miserably. They're eating out of garbage pails and dogs, as you mentioned, in Venezuela. I think it's ironic, doesn't cover it, inexplicable once again. Final question on the way out, Ben Shapiro. The border. The New York Times calling it a breaking point at this point. And Trump's national emergency may get voted down in the Congress. I mean, what's going to happen there? Is he going to veto it? Are Republicans voting against it? Is it a good thing? Or what do you think about the national emergency?
I mean, I think that Republicans are right to vote against it, and I think it is a national emergency. So both things are true, meaning that there's no question that what's going on at our southern border is an emergency. It's been a slow-rolling emergency for decades. It's now rearing its head again. That's nothing new. The problem with the president declaring a national emergency legally is that if you start declaring national emergencies anytime you can't get legislation through Congress, that's a pretty bad precedent, and it is a violation of the constitutional order. With that said, the likely outcome here is that Republicans vote against it. President Trump vetoes that bill, and then he tries to build a wall, and then somebody sues, and presumably the courts either stop him or they don't stop him. I mean, that's the most likely way that this works out. Again, I would have preferred that President Trump just declared authority under 10 U.S.C. 284 and said this is a drug corridor and we have to secure this drug corridor. He wouldn't have had to declare a national emergency, but I think this is all going to basically go according to his plan, which is that he declares a national emergency, Republicans signal their non-support, and then whatever happens from there.
All right, my man. We enjoyed this spot every Thursday. Bernie and I, the listeners, like it very much as well, and wish you continued success afternoons here at the station, and look forward to next week, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. That's Ben Shapiro. We'll take a short break. Bill O'Reilly's coming up. Bernie and Sid. We're coming right back.
Bernie and Sid in the morning.